I'm Jonathan Larson with TYTI Investigates, and we are going to be talking because Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are engaged in a back and forth about who supported the Iraq War, when and how and in what way. And The Intercept, a friend of TYT, Ryan Grimm at The Intercept, has a story out this morning where they've unearthed video. And I say unearthed, it wasn't secret, it was on C-SPAN, but it takes some effort and the will to find it, to go and look and actually watch and see what people had to say. And Ryan concluded, and I agree, that what Biden had to say about Iraq in 1998 is worth us giving some thought to. So I'm going to share some of the quotes that Ryan has from his article. Here we go. Joe Biden, 5 years before invasion, said the only way of disarming Iraq is, quote, taking Saddam down. So we're going to go through some of what Biden said, because I think regardless, Biden talks about having faced Bush down and saying, we'll give you whatever was power for the inspectors, but you can't make war. Well, too bad, obviously. The way he puts it is something like, the next thing you know, shock and awe. Who could possibly have imagined? So let's go through exactly what he said. I should clarify, it happened in September 1998. Biden was the highest ranking Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee. This is, of course, under President Clinton, a Democrat. UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter was testifying after resigning in protest about the lack of resources and authority that weapons inspectors were being given. In other words, he wanted the international community to be tougher on Iraq, to allow them to do more to vet and access Iraq's relevant facilities and programs to determine whether or not any of them were engaged in the production or research for weapons of mass destruction. Again, keep in mind, 1998, pre-Bush, pre-9/11. Here's what Biden says. Biden says that it doesn't matter how thorough the inspections are. Quote, this is quoting Biden now from the article, quote, the primary policy is to keep sanctions in place to deny Saddam the billions of dollars that would allow him to really crank up his program, which neither you nor I believe he's ever going to abandon as long as he's in place. In other words, Biden right there is setting up this equivalence. Saddam in power equals weapons of mass destruction. Quote, you and I believe, and many of us here believe, as long as Saddam is at the helm, there is no reasonable prospect you or any other inspector is ever going to be able to guarantee that we have rooted out, root and branch, the entirety of Saddam's program relative to weapons of mass destruction. In other words, not only is Biden saying that inspections are by definition useless, the reason he's saying they're useless is because he's imagining that the goal should be a guarantee. And I'm debating whether or not to address that now, because I think I'll forget later. So I'll address it now. The desire for guarantees like that, for certainty, for absolutism, are not good. They are unhealthy, they are unrealistic, and they are toxic. They are destructive in and of themselves, because they foster this notion that we should be in the business of seeking certainty about anything that might exist and might therefore be used against us, because someone might decide that they have something to gain by doing it. These are not how grown-ups navigate the world, or should. Continuing with Biden, quote, you and I both know, again he's talking to Ritter, who just resigned as the UN weapons inspector, you and I both know, and all of us here really know, and it's a thing we have to face, that the only way we're going to get rid of Saddam Hussein is we're going to end up having to start it alone. And it's going to require guys like you in uniform to be back on foot in the desert, taking Saddam down. You know it, and I know it. 1998, pre-9/11, rampant fear of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was a thing. People did know about it. Intelligence officials and analysts were concerned about Al-Qaeda, but it had not metastasized and done its job of making everyone fearful all the time. And then Ryan says, in his article, quoting Ryan Grimnow, quote, Hussein, it turned out, did not have an active WMD program, but was hoping to keep Iran, his regime's longtime foe. They fought a massive war, 1 million dead in the 80s. Saddam was hoping to keep Iran, his regime's longtime foe, guessing as to whether he did have a WMD program as a deterrent. This isn't unique to the Middle East, but it's especially bad in the Middle East. We have not just nations, but also factions, right? Within Turkey, you've got Kurds. Within Syria, you've got Kurds. You've got Sunni and Shia in Iraq. You have not just nations, but factions. And sometimes some of them are allied with the US or willing to work with the US, and sometimes they are allied with others who are less friendly to the US, and sometimes they themselves are directly unfriendly to the US. But they all have relationships to each other outside of the US, meaning that don't involve the US. And the point I want to make about this is that they have their own reasons, independent of the US, but also very dependent on the US, to want to signal strength, military strength especially, to their rivals and to their allies, right? So we helped create a situation where Saddam Hussein had everything to gain by looking strong, right? If you don't want Iran to come back in again as revenge for the time you invaded Iran, you want them to think that you have WMDs, which, with the United States' help, you attacked Iran only 20 years prior, right? You want them to be afraid of that still. So, but we treat those nations that seek even just the appearance of military strength as inherent threats to us, because anyone with power anywhere who might someday maybe have a reason that we can't identify now to use them against us, that's scary to us because we're children. And I need to come up with a better metaphor, because that's not a fair one to children. And I dislike the constant talking down about kids and taking a dump on kids. But what I'm saying is, it's not a mature, sober view of the world. This notion that strength somewhere is a threat to us, or the reality that you live in a world with potential threats, right? We live all the time with the possibility of getting struck by lightning or knocked down by meteors, and it does not freak us out. We walk around and we go about our day. We need to return to a time when threat tolerance is an understood, explicit part of who we are. What does Land of the Brave mean if not the ability to function in the face of potential cause for fear? Biden says, thanking Ritter, he says, the reason why I'm glad what you did is we should come to our milk, meaning we should figure out what we're going to do. Quote, we should make a decision. And several years ago, I was reading up on hostage negotiation, crisis negotiation, and I see a lot of the mentalities that I read about in those works in politics a lot. Biden said in 1998 we should make a decision about WMDs, about whether or not to go in and take out Saddam Hussein. But we hadn't done it for years, and we wouldn't do it for another 5 years. And there's nothing in those intervening 5 years to say, oh, if only we had gone in earlier. And so when someone says we should make a decision, we are obliged to ask why. And I wrote down a note here, which I hope I remember what I meant. But, right, so I was grappling with, why is it that Biden felt in September of 1998 we should make a decision? And there's two dimensions here. There's two elements to this. One is there was a tension between, in crisis negotiation, there was a tension between the tactical guys, the guys with the big guns and the laser sights and all the fancy gear, and the negotiators. And it used to be that the tactical guys would run the scene, and at a certain point, they would just get so itchy and worked up that they would just say, we have to go in. We have to go in. And there would be no reason they had to go in except that mounting stress and anxiety and suspense that they were feeling. They couldn't bear it anymore. Something's got to happen. And when they put the crisis negotiators in charge, they saw, oh, no, something doesn't necessarily have to happen. We can ride out those moments of fear and stress and anxiety, and as long as you are still talking, people aren't dying. And if you recall, back in the 90s, we had things like Waco and Ruby Ridge and all of these places where overzealous reliance on a tactical approach actually made things worse. And we haven't had one of these big national hostage standoffs since then. And I believe a large part of that is because now you have crisis negotiators in charge. And one of the things they specifically train to do is to ride it out, to resist that feeling of we should make a decision. And the other note I wanted to make was not about crisis negotiators, but about politics, especially American politics. American exceptionalism is a dangerous drug, but it's important to acknowledge the effect, the impact, the consequences of our unique power on the world stage. And here's why that relates to Biden thinking we should make a decision. The reason I came up with that I wrote down was the reason he felt we should make a decision was because when you have the power to act, not just America, but he was in the party that held the White House at the time, top Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee. When you have the power to act against anything, inaction, the lack of action, looks like you are endorsing anything that you allow to happen, right? So any regime that's operating on the world stage is logically being allowed to do so by the United States, because the United States has the ability to take out virtually any regime at once if it's going to choose only one on its menu. That regime's existence now looks like a specific endorsement, a sanctioning of that regime. And for the most of the time, that doesn't matter because no one's paying attention to foreign affairs because America, woohoo! But when a regime is elevated in the public eye and it is discussed as a potential threat because Saddam Hussein was apparently suicidal and would have wanted to use WMDs against the United States knowing that would mean his death, madman fallacy is another dangerous drug. But because of all these things, inaction looks like you are now letting Saddam Hussein pursue WMDs. Inaction against Iran feels like you are letting Soleimani give the okay to terrorist operations. You are letting Iran pursue nuclear weapons. You are letting the regime exist. When you have the power to take out Iran, not doing so looks like a decision to let Iran exist. After 9/11, during a series of high-profile hearings, Biden feigned neutrality about whether to invade Iraq. This is reading from Ryan Grimm's article again. But Biden's earlier questioning of Scott Ritter, the weapons inspector, leaves no doubt where he stood. Iraq had WMDs, and the only way to disarm Iraq with confidence was to depose Saddam Hussein. Biden, given his chairmanship, was a leading voice in foreign policy within the party. He had voted against the first Gulf War, waged by Bush's father, and was not considered a knee-jerk hawk. His support for the 2003 war made Democratic opposition ultimately untenable, even as Scott Ritter, in the run-up to it, loudly made the case against war, arguing that the WMD claims were overhyped. Now, Biden makes the case that he was actually arguing for moderation at the time. Reading from Ryan again, Biden, to be sure, was not a full-throated advocate for the war on Bush's terms, and throughout the fall, worked with Republican senators Richard Lugar and Chuck Hagel to try to build support for a narrower authorization that would only allow Bush to attack Iraq for the purpose of dismantling a WMD program. That effort was undercut by House Democratic leaders, particularly Congressman Dick Gephardt of Missouri, who pushed ahead with Bush's broader authorization for force. And the note I have there is you can't moderate once you light the match. And it's also tougher to moderate when you're not in power, because Biden, the Democrats did not have the White House in 2003. It's tougher to moderate in 2003 when you don't have the White House. If in 1998, when you did have the White House, you were all about the chest thumping, right? So the danger of chest thumping when you have power is that you endorse it. You endorse chest thumping, not even a specific action. You endorse chest thumping. You endorse this unmature view of the world in which no threat can be tolerated, or at least no threat that's being talked about on cable news, right? Other threats, sure, that's fine. Climate change, we can tolerate the hell. Wait till you see how much climate change we can tolerate. Disease, we can tolerate that. Spread of STDs, we can tolerate that, certainly if it means not funding Planned Parenthood. We can tolerate all kinds of things, but if it's on cable news, then, what was Biden's phrase? We should make a decision. Because it feels like you are being specifically asked to do something, and every moment you don't, you feel culpable because of that dynamic of if you have the power to stop it and you don't, you're endorsing it. So, where does that leave us now? I try to stay away from making endorsements or non-endorsements in the presidential race. Everyone thinks because I'm reporting on Pete Buttigieg, he's my last choice to be president. And everyone thinks because this is the Young Turks that everything we do and say obviously has some angle as to how this video with almost 1,000 views is being done to elect Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders voted for the war as well. The problem is not about one specific politician here. It's about the ways we think about power when we have it and when we don't. And when I say we, I mean politicians. And by extension, I mean Americans, right? This notion that, and it got worse before 9/11, but this was, and I probably wrongly attribute to 9/11 a lot of our lack of threat tolerance, right? We're supposed to be able to tolerate threats, if only because the American project of threat extinction has clearly, undeniably been the catalyst for more threats than simply exercising mature threat tolerance would be. The way to do that is you just support in a responsible, accountable, transparent way values and principles, not specific players that you consider allies. So my point is not don't vote for Joe Biden. My point is not vote for Bernie Sanders. Again, voted for the war. And I'm not saying that Biden and Sanders are equal. Biden obviously has a much more saber-rattling record than Sanders does. But my point, again, is not about the individual politicians. It's as we go about the process of choosing candidates, choosing a nominee, it's important not just to weigh were they right or they wrong on this issue, but how did they see the decision-making process? If they said at any point, we should make a decision, that to me raises a flag that they're not present of mind about the dangers of making a decision for the sake of making a decision. And I want to go back for a minute to, I'll see if I can find it. I'm going to jump in and see all of your comments, but someone said something yesterday about a video that I did, and they were really yelling at me. And of course, there's no better way to get someone's attention than by saying something critical. So let me see if I can find that comment because I want to share it, and I want to kind of get your thoughts, and I don't have like a specific, yeah, I'm going to put them in their place kind of thing. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it. So hold on, bear with me 1 second. Okay, here we go. This is a comment from yesterday's video that says, Jonathan, if people are pushing policies that are in, and I'm not reading the person's name not to be disrespectful, but because I don't want to start a pylon in my defense. So person who commented on it, I hope that's okay. They say, Jonathan, if people are pushing policies that are in direct contradiction with Christ, we were talking about the National Prayer Breakfast yesterday, it is fair to say they are misrepresenting Christ's message and teachings. There is evil in this world, man-made or not. Stop telling people what and how to think. Report the facts, even give your perspective, but stop telling people how to think. That is outside your purview. And I'm not sure. I think there is a line that I try to observe in terms of not advocating for specific outcomes, but I am guilty, I think, of telling people how to think. And I don't know that I have any specific authority on which to ground that position, but I hope that it's self-evident that when we do commentary here, and when I voice my opinions about how people should think, that it is opinion. This is my view of the dangers. And I would like to say, in my own defense, that I think I'm less invested in the project of telling people, here's how to think, because I definitely don't feel like I have the right answers on how to think. I'm more interested, I think, in addressing problems with how we do think. So I hope when I do offer commentary that strays beyond my perspective and gets into the realm of how we think, that it's clear that I'm not trying to get everyone to think the way I want them to think. I'm trying to share whatever insights I have about potential problems with the ways we do think. So I apologize if I've come off as, what's the word? Autocratic, I suppose, about thought processes and stuff like that. But I'm also not apologetic about it, I suppose. But I do want to be clear that I don't wish to stake a claim to absolute certainty about how people should think. I'm more interested in raising questions about potential problems with the ways we already do think. Nathaniel Earl says, good morning. DLJ says, happy Wednesday from Malaysia. Hell Bob says, hey, greetings from Germany. I think this is our first greetings from Germany. I was actually in Germany. I got to go several years ago. It was really exciting and cool. So thanks so much for joining us from Germany, Bob. I hope you'll subscribe. I'll take this opportunity. Anytime I see new folks joining us, I like to extend my request that you will subscribe, which helps us do our work, helps us spread the word even when I'm not telling people what to think or how to think. And it also, of course, helps you stay on top of our programming, which I hope you're enjoying. Victor Olivares says, yo. Ian James Chapman says, Biden hasn't met a war he didn't like. Well, according to Ryan's piece, he voted against the first Gulf War. So do things change? Did he change? I don't know, but it has certainly gotten tougher in our political system, in our civic discourse, to oppose war. Now, Bush and Iraq certainly changed that, but there was a while there, and obviously that was a prime goal that bin Laden had, was to get us into a militaristic mindset where we would okay any ill-advised foreign adventure, as they say. Hadija Brahim says, truest words. Milo Wadlin says, good morning. And Remiguez Nikander Galash, whose name you got to help me, because I feel like I'm butchering your name and I apologize, and I feel bad about it, has made a donation in the super chat. Thank you so much, RNG, and I hope it's okay that I call you RNG. Sarah's Boer Army says, thank you. I've been trying to point this out. Everyone keeps blaming only Bush when Iraq started with Clinton. Well, yeah, I'm not sure I would say it started with Clinton, but Clinton certainly didn't do anything to ratchet down tensions. Is kind of an unfair thing to put on one person. But when you're in a leadership position, I think you have that bully pulpit, and you're virtually the only politician who can make a case in a sustained way where you know that you're going to get the airtime and the oxygen you need to defend your case and to back it up and to come back and back and back with it. Clinton did not use his bully pulpit for that purpose on just about anything, and he certainly could have in terms of reshaping the American mindset so that we weren't so primed to be afraid. I talk a lot about the 1970s and how rampant terrorism was in the United States, not just at the United States, in the United States. Planes were hijacked, bombings, like Washington, D.C. bombings, okay? People were being killed by terrorists, it was not that unusual. And the country never freaked out in the way that we have seen it freak out more recently. And to some extent, I would say even before 9/11, certainly after 9/11, that was what the point of 9/11 was, to make us freak out, to make us respond in ways that we did not respond to in the 70s. If you're curious, go look up on Wikipedia the number of plane hijackings. Go look up 1970s plane hijackings. It's unbelievable. And yes, some of them are small. I don't care. RNG says, I have to go, meaning I have to leave. I'm sorry, we're going to lose you, RNG. Thank you very much for the donation, and Godspeed on your travels. Thank you for joining us. But RNG wants me to keep going, to keep talking. Today, I have to keep it short, guys. Today, I am keeping it short. Milo Wadland says, greetings to Malaysia and Germany from Oregon. I love this whole little UN that we've got going here. Thank you, everyone. And Parrot One says, sorry I'm late, only just got the notification. On behalf of YouTube, I apologize. Ian James Chapman says, first New Mexico poll by Emerson today. Sanders 28, Biden 27, Yang 10, Warren 8, Buttigieg 7, Bloomberg 3, Klobuchar 2, Booker 2, Gabbard 2, Steyer 1. So thank you for presenting the poll information. I'm going to try not to get into polling stuff in the future, just because there are so many voices and so many outlets that already do that. I've paid a psychic toll behind closed doors for fighting horse race journalism, so it kind of gets at me when I give into it in my own head. Doesn't mean you're out of line for doing it. It's fine. It's great. Keep it up. I just am explaining why I'm going to try not to as we get closer, and I'm interested in it too. Mr. Elder says, yeah, but being struck by lightning. So what I mean is, the things that we decide we can't do anything about, right? You actually can prevent meteors. To some extent, you can prevent lightning too, right? We invented lightning rods. You can prevent being hit by lightning. People don't go outside. There are ways we can do this stuff. What we don't do is have a national freak out and insist on 100% guarantee that no one will ever be hit by lightning, right? We take reasonable measures. We put a metal pole on the roof. Ta-da! End of story. We don't go outside and play baseball with our aluminum bat in a thunderstorm. What we don't do is install guards at the doors of our schools to prevent anyone from going outside when it's raining, right? We don't take this maximalist approach that we take to something that historically, statistically, kills fewer people. And I have some thoughts about why that is, but the point is, we take a grown-up approach to meteor threats and lightning rods, although I would argue we could actually be doing a little bit more about meteors in terms of figuring out how to blast those things out of the sky or do whatever it takes. And when I say blast, maybe it's a magnetic response. I don't know. I'm not going for the Michael Bay instinct there. Sarah's Boar Army says you can just not go outside to avoid lightning. I should have read ahead. Don't want war, don't invade. Meteors, though, yeah. Poor dinosaurs couldn't do a thing. Dennis Miller says, thanks for using toxic. It has been a problem for years to hear anyone using language that makes information clear. Thank you, Dennis. I'm not sure I followed what you were thanking me for, but I appreciate the thumbs up at least. Mr. Elder says, nope, people have been struck by lightning even in their house. Yes, they have, and we don't freak out about it. Ian James Chapman says, January 1998, Project for a New American Century, PNAC, founded by Cheney, Scooter Libby, Donald Rumsfeld, Jeb Bush, Paul Wolfowitz, and other top neocons, demands President Clinton undertake the removal of Saddam Hussein's regime, according to Mother Jones. And of course, in September 1998, there we've got Biden being all, bombastic and militaristic about it. And Ian, you brought me back to my Air America Radio and MSNBC days with all those names. Man, oh man, those people. Mr. Elder says human nature can be prevented, nature can't be. Well, I don't know if you've noticed, Mr. Elder, but we're preventing the hell out of nature right now, right? By changing the climate, right? It can be done. Anyway, I hope you and I are not really fighting. I'm just being annoyingly pugnacious in response to you. I'm sorry. RNG says 9/11 never happened. I was in New York City working for CNN on 9/11 and made it to ground zero, well, within the zone beneath 14th Street. And I guarantee you it happened. Okay. This is not a place where I'm gonna. You're not going to find a lot of welcome for 9/11 deniers here. I thank you for your donations, but I hope that you're not saying what it sounds like you're saying, RNG, because we were doing so well. And look, I'd rather convince you that it happened than have you leave thinking that it didn't happen. So maybe we'll have to engage on this at some point. Okay. Ian James Chapman is posting more of the neocon. Right. Yeah. 31 October 1998, Clinton signs the Iraq Liberation Act. Regime change becomes official U.S. policy. You're bumming me out, Ian. You're taking me back. You're taking me back. And by the way, when I say taking me back, like, not a lot of people were even paying attention in 1998 to the Iraq stuff. Although it's true that the whole clash over the weapons inspectors, that was a big deal. It obviously didn't rise to the level of public awareness of 9/11 or the Iraq War or anything, but it was a big deal in media circles and so on. It was getting covered on the news and all that. And the coverage was unreflexively, but reflexively just militaristic. Totally unexamined was the question of not just whether he wanted them, it was assumed he had them, but why would he want to attack us? How would he attack us? To what end, right? There was just not even contemplated to ask the question, let alone discuss what the reality might be. RNG, okay, RNG, you were messing with me because now you say, RNG says it's a non-issue, you do not understand, I think you do understand very little, and then you say you are so cool and donate money. So I'm not sure what to do with this, RNG. I suspect that there's a language barrier here, which is my fault, obviously, a lot more than yours. So I apologize for that, and I hope we're still cool, right, as the bros say. Wag Roads 13 says Iraqi PM confirms Soleimani was in Baghdad on a diplomatic mission. Yeah, I've read stuff to that effect as well. Mr. Elder says Biden is using this crap with Iran to say he is the best option. That is crap coming from a crap candidate. So it's fascinating to me because I did see, sorry, horse race. I did see a poll talking about how people consider Biden the best on foreign policy because he's got the most experience on foreign policy. Oh, okay. Well, it seems to me that it should be material what that experience is. And I don't know why that doesn't get looked at or considered. Let's see. I do have to wrap it up, but you guys have a lot of comments here. Let's see. Jess says, everyone, please do not forget to like this video. Smiley face. Thank you so much. And if you don't like the video, it's okay not to click that you like the video. It's okay. Sarah's Boer Army says, actually, Clinton was the first to drop a bomb to intimidate Hussein in 1998, the day after he was served articles of impeachment. Again, let's not forget that we invaded Iraq back in, what was it, 1991, 92? I don't remember. We actually invaded, so let's not forget that part either. Let's see. Sarah's Boer Army says, I agreed that you can't avoid meteors. I was just being difficult. Guilty as well, Sarah. I'm not sure whether to call you Sarah or the Boer Army of Sarah, but either way, I'm with you as well. Okay. Mr. Elder says, that's why you should plan out an hour, John. We love commenting. Maybe what I should do is I should just take off the mic and go get the rest of my work done and leave the chat up for you guys, for you folks to continue talking with each other. Okay. Recovering Redneck says, Happy New Year, Jonathan. Hadija Brahim says, wow, 9/11 definitely happened. I almost lost my father and he lost a friend. I'm sorry, Hadija. I'm very sorry for that. I did not know anyone. I mean, I was not friends with anyone who died on 9/11. I knew I had dealt with 3 firefighters who died because I had been a local reporter. And so when they would read out the names every once in a while, I would look up and think, yep, I knew that guy. I met that guy. He was a source, whatever it might be. But again, also, like, we could see it. We could smell it. It was in the air. It was in the air for weeks and months. You could smell it. Literally, the city was different. There was this awful soot everywhere. And the smell. The fires burned for, I believe it was at least a couple months. And you could go down and see it. And I knew people, you know, Paul Rykoff was one of the people who worked down there. I knew Paul years later. In fact, and I knew a friend of mine worked on Wall Street, saw people's bodies coming down, not literally on Wall Street, but worked down in the financial district, saw bodies hit the ground, literally was pregnant and has participated in programs about like what effect, you know, that kind of trauma would have on people, stuff like that. Anyway, so yeah, in conclusion, 9/11 happened. We know when it happened. It was 9/11, and we know where it happened. So anyway, I'm going to try not to indulge the 9/11 discussion too much because it's absurd. And I try not to get offended, and I don't get offended by a lot, but it offends me, and I offend myself when I get sucked into it. So I apologize, and I hope that I haven't disturbed anyone by giving oxygen to that. It's still real and traumatic for people who were, you know, cognizant adults and lived through it. So with that, I will say, try to take care of yourselves a little better than I did just now by indulging in that discussion, and take care of each other. And tomorrow, I believe, we're going to have Ken Klippenstein here at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you don't subscribe already, please do. That way, if he happens to be late, which could happen, then you'll get the notification in a timely manner, I hope, when he does. So yeah, subscribe to us here at TYT Investigates. Find us over on Facebook, same thing, TYT Investigates. Like and follow us there. And with luck, fingers crossed, I've got a new story coming out today with a collaborator I think you'll be very excited about. So fingers crossed. See you soon. Bye.